A 19-year-old voice toppled the charts and then she stepped away from the spotlight. No tours, few interviews, and a mystique that only grew. Kate Bush didn't just write songs, she staged entire worlds. Gothic novels turned into pop singles, layered vocal choirs that sounded like choirs of ghosts, and bold studio experiments that made synthesizers and sampling feel cinematic. Most people recognize the chorus of Wuthering Heights, but few understand how she reinvented storytelling in pop, used the fairlight to sculpt new textures, and choreographed her records as theater. In this video, we'll crack the myth, how creative obsession pushed her out of public life, how those years of seclusion fed her most daring work, and why a 2014 return rewrote what a comeback can mean. You'll get crisp snapshots, teenage breakthrough, studio eccentricities, the making of Hounds of Love and the Ninth Wave, and testimonials from artists she reshaped. Watch until the end to see how privacy became her power and why modern pop still carries her fingerprints. Stay with me. This is the story behind the songs. 1. Strong hook. Intriguing fact or question about her reclusiveness. One of pop music's most enigmatic figures deliberately traded the glare of constant publicity for the solitude of home-based creation, a choice that turned privacy into a central part of her artistic identity. She rarely gave interviews and stopped touring after a single, highly theatrical concert run, opting instead to shape every sound and image from a distance. That withdrawal didn't silence her. It amplified her mystique and made each new release an event rather than background noise. This retreat presented a clear problem. How could an artist remain vital and influential without the regular visibility that most pop careers depend on? The answer lay in control. By recording largely in her own space, directing her own videos and stage choreography, and limiting public appearances, she exchanged continuous exposure for uncompromised creative authority. The result was music that sounded uncompromised, and a public persona that fans found intoxicating precisely because it was scarce. Concrete details show how the strategy played out. Early in her career, she staged a costumed, dance-heavy tour that showcased her theatrical instincts and set a template for performative pop. After stepping back from the road, she continued to release albums crafted with meticulous arrangement and vocal experimentation, and when she did return to live performance, it was on her own terms. Intimate, narratively driven, and tightly staged, more like theater than a typical rock concert. Her refusal to be ubiquitous made rare interviews, television appearances, and live shows feel like cultural moments. Fans saved clippings and bootlegs, and critics parsed every lyric for clues. For creators, fans, and observers, her example integrates the tension between artistry and attention. You can choose to cultivate distance and still connect deeply, as long as the work itself is uncompromising and accessible in its scarcity. If you want to understand that balance, listen closely to her quieter songs, watch the few filmed performances that exist, and read the lyrics with an ear for narrative and theatrical gesture. Respect the privacy that shaped the art, but engage with the rarities that reveal why that reclusiveness became an integral part of her genius. 2. Present the problem, balancing fame and privacy. She became a phenomenon on the strength of a voice and songs she wrote herself, and yet she chose to withdraw from the usual machinery of celebrity. That paradox, brilliant public output paired with fiercely private habits, is at the heart of the problem. How does a singular artist keep creative control and a normal life when visibility is the currency of pop? The conflict shows up everywhere. Intense media curiosity, fan expectations for access, managers and labels pushing for tours and publicity, and an artist who values solitude for the work itself. The consequences are practical as well as personal. Press and paparazzi intrusions can interrupt the creative process and strain family life. Fans, hungry for connection, sometimes mistake availability for entitlement and pursue the artist beyond reasonable bounds. At the same time, a refusal to engage with standard promotional paths can limit commercial reach and invite speculation that distorts the artist's true intentions. Those pressures create a tightrope: maintain privacy and risk being marginalized, or surrender privacy and risk losing the inner life that fuels the music. A clear response emerges from the choices she made: control the terms of exposure rather than submit to them. Instead of constant touring and relentless interviews, she concentrated on selective, carefully staged appearances and immersive theatrical shows that expressed her art without laying bare the private person. She choreographed and performed in her own videos and bespoke live productions, turning publicity opportunities into creative statements. This approach allowed her to communicate on her own terms while minimizing the routine invasions of celebrity life. Putting boundaries into practice requires concrete tactics. Limit interviews and prefer longer, in-depth conversations to a parade of sound bites. Choose intimate, short-run performances or special residencies where the environment is controlled, ticketing is managed, and the audience knows it's witnessing a rare event. Retain ownership over visual representation, from music videos to stage direction, so promotional moments remain extensions of the artistry rather than windows into domestic life. Collaborate with trusted teams who respect confidentiality and can filter requests that would undermine privacy. For artists, managers, and fans alike, the lesson is actionable. Structure publicity to protect the creative core. Fans can channel admiration into support for the work itself, not the invasive pursuit of a personal life. Industry professionals can design campaigns that amplify music while limiting exposure that serves no artistic purpose. If you care about sustaining genius, respect the boundaries that allow it to flourish. Consider your next stream, ticket purchase, or headline click, and choose the option that honors the artist's right to privacy, as well as their right to be heard. 3. Early life and background. She grew up in Bexley Heath in southeast London, in a household where music and stories were woven into daily life. That environment gave her a fertile imagination, but it also presented a problem. A fiercely original voice emerging from a conventional suburban setting with few obvious routes to the kind of artistic freedom she wanted. Traditional pathways for young female performers tended to favor imitation over invention. She wanted to write, compose, and perform on her own terms, not fit into someone else's mold. The solution was to build a private, disciplined apprenticeship in sound and movement. Piano lessons and drama classes sharpened her musical ear and theatrical instincts. Dance training taught her how to use the body as a storytelling instrument, a skill that would later define her stage presence. At the same time, she was composing, working out melodies and narratives in solitude, experimenting with vocal textures and piano arrangements until the song sounded like something no one else could sing. Details matter here. Family support gave her the space to practice and to pursue odd ideas. Her brother, John Carter Bush, was part of that creative circle and later contributed as a writer and artist in the wider orbit of her work. She soaked up literature and film as sources of character and atmosphere, turning novels and cinematic images into the raw material of songs. Early performances in local venues and polished demos recorded at home made the leap from private exploration to public possibility, drawing the attention of established musicians who recognized her distinctiveness and helped her take the next step. All these threads, suburban upbringing, disciplined training in piano, dance and drama, a rich imaginative diet and family encouragement, integrated to produce a musician whose early life was less about celebrity and more about craft. Her formative years were a laboratory. She learned how to translate inner worlds into music, how to shape vocal lines around dramatic phrasing, and how to make storytelling the spine of a pop song. If you want to hear those roots, seek out her early demos, read interviews that trace the influences, and listen closely to the way early compositions already hint at the originality that would define her career. 4. Musical breakthroughs and achievements. Mainstream pop often settled for producer-driven formulas and radio-friendly hooks. Kate Bush tackled that problem by seizing creative control and redefining what a pop artist could be. She wrote the bulk of her own material, arranged unusual instrument combinations, and stepped into the producer's chair at critical moments, insisting that songs be constructed as dramatic, cinematic pieces rather than 3-minute commodities. The result was music that sounded unlike anything around it, intimate one moment, operatic the next, and it shifted expectations for female singer-songwriters in popular music. Her studio became an instrument. She embraced emerging sampling technology and unconventional recording techniques, layering found sounds, breathy vocal textures, and synthesizer atmospheres to build densely detailed sonic worlds. Songs moved from verse-chorus predictability into suites and narratives. One entire album side unfolds as a continuous story about survival and inner life, blending spoken passages, vocal harmonies, and instrumental interludes into a single emotional arc. At the same time, she crafted standalone singles that married literary inspiration with earworm melodies, demonstrating that ambition and accessibility could coexist. The visual and performative elements of her work were breakthroughs too. She choreographed striking, idiosyncratic movements for videos and TV appearances, turning promotional clips into short theatrical works. That attention to staging extended to the studio, where she used multi-tracked vocals and inventive microphone techniques to treat her voice as both lead instrument and textural element. Peer artists and later generations, from art pop experimenters to alternative singer-songwriters, frequently cite her fearless blending of art-music sensibilities with popcraft as a direct influence. Her accomplishments reached beyond the records themselves. Few contemporary pop figures combined critical respect, mainstream recognition, and an uncompromising creative vision in the way she did. Honors and widespread critical acclaim followed, and more recently, a new wave of listeners discovered her work when one of her songs re-entered popular culture through a hit television drama, exposing her innovations to a generation that hadn't been alive for her first run. Even her rare live appearances were staged as theatrical achievements, with a celebrated concert residency that translated her studio complexity into visceral, live storytelling. If you want to hear how these breakthroughs actually sound, listen closely to the albums and videos that emphasize narrative structure, studio experimentation, and bold vocal performance. Study her arrangements, note how silence and space are used as effectively as instrumentation, and watch how visual choreography extends a song's meaning. Experience both the hits and the long-form pieces. That is where the genius fully reveals itself. 5. Personal struggles and deeper creative insights. She withdrew from constant publicity not because she faded, but because she needed space to reckon with the costs of being a public figure while remaining true to a singular artistic vision. The problem was immediate and personal. The machinery of pop demanded touring, promotion, easy narratives. That machinery clashed with a temperament that preferred composition, theatricality, and slow, private invention. The consequence was a choice to step back, not as retreat, but as a deliberate method of preservation and renewal. What followed was a radical reorientation of how to make music. Rather than letting the market set the pace, she built a private environment where songs could be treated like short dramas. She layered her voice as an instrument, embraced sampling technologies, and assembled suites that moved through mood and story rather than chart-friendly hooks. She turned literature and film into raw material, singing characters in Blaiken and Brontean voices, and wrote pieces that feel like internal journeys more than pop singles. The result was music that asks the listener to lean in, to follow an emotional narrative that demands attention and patience. Closer inspection reveals the practical ways those personal struggles deepened her craft. Early support from established musicians opened doors, but she insisted on running her own studio live. Longtime collaborators provided technical skill and sympathetic perspective, not creative control. Dance and mime training informed her phrasing and performance instincts, so that even a recorded vocal has theatrical shape. Songs written for external projects, like a tender meditation intended for a film about childbirth, became touchstones because they stripped away performance bravado and exposed vulnerability. She wrote from other perspectives with empathy, imagined the body at sea, and compressed entire psychological states into short, arresting musical forms. Perfectionism isn't vanity here. It's a tool that shapes sonic detail until an emotional truth can be heard clearly. Those choices integrated into a legacy that keeps expanding. Solitude became a laboratory. The less she chased the spotlight, the more distinctive the work became, and the more other artists and listeners returned to study her methods. If you want to trace how personal struggle transformed into creative insight, listen all the way through a multi-part sequence and then read the lyrics aloud. Watch a rare live tape to see how movement and voice cohere. Reach out to the collaborators' interviews for behind-the-scenes context. Do one concrete thing. Spend an evening with an album uninterrupted. Note moments that sound like theatrical beats. And let the privacy she cultivated teach you how distance can sharpen rather than dull artistic perception. 6. Legacy plus call to action. Subscribe, like, comment. Kate Bush rewrote the rules of pop by treating songs as miniature dramas, using unusual song structures and insisting on full creative control. That very independence, combined with long gaps between public appearances, created a paradox. Her work has been enormously influential, yet casual listeners can easily miss how deeply her fingerprints run through modern music. The problem is not a lack of quality. It's the way an artist who avoids the spotlight can be misunderstood, written off as eccentric rather than recognized as foundational. A quiet remedy arrived through the ripple effects of other artists, media placements, and devoted fans who keep rediscovering her catalogue. When a major television series put one of her songs back into millions of playlists, people who had never heard her music before found themselves captivated by its emotional and sonic boldness. Musicians from across genres repeatedly point to her as a touchstone. Artists who build theatrical live shows, who push vocal dynamics, or who write literate, character-driven songs often trace a line back to her example. That kind of advocacy, fellow creators elevating her work, is how a reclusive artist's legacy stays alive. Look closer and you see concrete traces everywhere. The way contemporary video artists fold choreography into promo films echoes her early music videos. Singers who blend vulnerability and virtuosity follow a pathway she helped clear. Producers who marry organic instruments with synthesizers are standing on techniques she popularized. Specific musicians have cited her influence on their approach to songwriting and stagecraft, and her songs keep appearing in covers, playlists, and curated sets that introduce them to new ears. Beyond sound, her insistence on artistic autonomy provided a template for women in music who want to write, produce, and direct their own output, a practical cultural inheritance rather than an abstract reputation. You can be part of how her work continues to matter. Add tracks you love to your playlists, share a cover or a live clip with friends, or dig into the B-sides and film performances that reveal different facets of her craft. Tell us which Kate Bush song changed the way you listen and why. Drop a comment below. If you want more deep dives like this, subscribe and hit like so future episodes bring more stories about artists who reshaped popular music. Your clicks, shares, and conversations keep the music breathing. She walked away from the spotlight at the height of her fame. Not because she stopped creating, but because she refused to let fame redefine her work. That was the problem. The solution was radical. Kate Bush chose boundaries, turned inward, and let her art evolve on her own terms. Remember the facts that matter. As a teenager, she burst into the world with Wuthering Heights. She pioneered studio experimentation and theatrical songwriting on albums like Hounds of Love and The Sensual World. She taught herself new technologies and performance ideas. She staged a legendary secretive comeback with Before the Dawn. And decades later, a Netflix moment sent Running Up That Hill, storming back into the charts, proving her music never faded. Key points: creative independence, bold production choices, a life of deliberate privacy, and an influence that keeps reverberating across generations. If Kate's choices resonate with you, whether you create, curate, or just love great music, think about what boundaries protect your best work. Leave a comment with the Kate moment that moved you most. Hit subscribe if you want more deep dives, and share this with someone who needs to hear how art can outlast fame. Next up, we'll take apart Hounds of Love, track by track, and relive those live performances that finally brought her back to the stage. Don't miss it.